Greetings, and today I have another deck for you guys. So, if you guys have been around for long enough, you guys know that I am one of pretty much my weakest faction, whether it's I play with or play against, is Nilfgaard. I am notoriously bad with Nilfgaard, and that's because I think the gameplay is sort of different to me, like in terms of what I'm more comfortable with. It might be too complex for my simple mind. So what's a good way to remedy that is to play a deck from the Nilfgaard faction. So I went looking at Gwent went looking for decks, and I came across this one, and I thought this one was interesting because it was featuring cards that that has not seen gameplay like almost ever. And obviously, as you can tell from the first card, you guys can already kind of see what I'm talking about here. So I found this deck, and I made a couple changes to sort of like fit as to how I think it would fit better. But I will leave a link in the description to that deck that I did find, so if you want to check out that original deck. And I'll also leave a deck to like Gwent up, but I'm pretty sure most of you guys that find these videos is from Gwent up anyway. So I'm gonna go through this deck list again, one card at a time, so it'll be no gameplay again. I will be posting gameplay videos on Thursday from now on, so tomorrow this video will be uploaded, and Thursday you'll see the gameplay, sort of the gameplay for it, so you guys have an idea of what kind of potential it has or how strong it is in battle. So I don't know how to pronounce this card's name. Ihwarax. I can't remember. I don't remember if he's in The Witcher, but essentially his ability is if you put him in the melee row, we summon our highest provision unit, or if it's in the range row, it's the lowest provision unit, and it's going to those respective rows. Excuse me. So the strong thing about this, when I first saw this, I was wondering, like, what is he trying to do? Is he trying to go for the bottom? Is he trying to go for the top? And when I went 2 cards down, I saw Tibber. So I was like, okay, so the Huarax must be trying to get Tibber out onto the field without it triggering its deployability. So right away, this tells me that you want Tibber to be in the deck, sort of, for the majority of the game. You don't ever want these two out at the same time. Of course, if that ends up being the case, you will end up getting Stregobor. But the thing is, Huarax won't work well as Stregobor because it must be done in the melee row, which is gonna suck. So it's essentially being used for Tibber. So, that's essentially what Huarax would be most useful for, if you were to ask me. Because honestly, going for any of these low, I mean, it's not so bad if you get Nausicaa Sergeant or Infiltrator. So actually, you know what? That's also one of the changes I'm gonna cover these 2 cards now, so I'm not gonna cover them later. The Nausicaa Sergeant, because there are quite a lot of deploy cards here that can benefit the Nausicaa Sergeant. And the Infiltrator, which will always serve sort of that deck disruption from your opponent, because if they're forced to draw it, then they don't have a choice but to, use up a mulligan to get rid of the Infiltrator. But the bad news potentially for me is that it could also come back on my deck if he decides to play it. But I think that's sort of the beauty of this deck, because it can kind of avoid that, and I'm gonna cover that as well in this video. So I've covered the 2 lowest units on the bottom of the deck here, and how they can play very well as well with Huarax. So let's go down the line. So we got Yennefer's Invocation, which lets you put an artifact or a unit on top of its owner's deck. Now, you can have some combinations with Yennefer's Invocation. You can put it on top of you can put one of your opponent's units, especially probably their strongest one, on the top of their deck, and then possibly want to get rid of it with Traherne. But I think a better use for it is if you want to use a unit's ability twice, then you're probably going to want to put Yennefer's Invocation to return, let's say, Vilgefortz on top of the deck, and with using Jan Calvea, sort of a combo to get Vilgefortz out immediately, because unless you're playing a Nilfgaard deck as well, like if you're playing against the Nilfgaard deck, chances are you can get away with playing Yennefer's Invocation to getting Vilgefortz back on top of the deck, and then just wait another turn to let's say probably play Isabel of Haga, where you're going to want to draw Vilgefortz, or you got some other options as well. Here is another card that can actually prove very well for that. So Yennefer's Invocation. So if you're not using it to play your opponent back on top of putting your card back on top of your deck, then you can obviously you can also put an enemy's unit on top of their deck. I kind of went through this, but if you want to get rid of that unit, or you don't even have to get rid of it, you have Cantarella. Cantarella lets you play the top card of your opponent's deck, which is most likely going to end up being what Yennefer's Invocation returns on the top of the deck, unless of course they find a way of drawing it out immediately. So if you're going to make that combo with returning their unit, make sure you almost want to combo it with Jan Calvé's Order to get Cantarella out to sort of use him for that maximum power immediately. So moving down the line, Tiber, again, he's going to be the target of these two big cards, and you want to make combos with that. So sort of, again, already went through it. You're trying to avoid its deployability. So Warax will do just that. You could also use Yennefer's Invocation to sort of return him back to your deck, but that's a 13 power. You might want to keep him on because that's a lot of tempo right there, and you don't want to get rid of that so easily. Stregobor is also a unit that you can use to sort of disrupt your opponent's units. So if you did use Yennefer's Invocation to return a unit back on top of their deck, and you play Stregobor, they'll be stuck with a 1-unit card. So again, similar to what the Infiltrator does, it's gonna force them to sort of use it as a mulligan, or if they keep it in their hand, then it's gonna mess them up, because having a 1 power is going to be pretty weak unless they have a super strong ability. Now the thing with Stregobor is he plays kind of similar to where the heck is he? The thing is, I'm not so familiar with these names because they confuse me a little bit, but like it's essentially the card I'm talking about, this one. Talking about Shillard Osterlund, where you set the power of, so again, having that 1 card cost, but I think this one is more sort of guaranteed because it's going to be already in his hand anyway. But yeah, sort of the best comparison I can make. Villageforts, again, can combo it with Yennefer's Invocation. So if you want to put a sort of strong unit back on top of your deck that you want to play again for its deployability or of its disruption ability or whatever, then you can do that to that card and sort of have, again, if they're not playing a Mirror Nilfgaard deck where they have their own Traherne where they can just, or Viper Witcher down here where they can just send the top card of your deck and just completely get rid of it, then you can run this combo where Villageforts can just bring the top card. So it's essentially using the top card of your deck as that's sort of your best weapon in this deck, is the top card of your deck. Or it could be, the best weapon could be the top card of your opponent's deck, because I kind of mentioned the Viper Witchers, which will be coming up very soon. Asir Van Anahid, if you want to return any units back from your graveyard to your deck, if you wanted to use them again, let's per se for example, then you could also use that. You got Isbel. The thing with Asir is I'm not seeing too much value from her. I mean, I get that you get to bring back units from the graveyard back to the deck, but I feel like that won't be as valuable. So if I'm gonna make a change here, I might try to take out Asir. And I want to put in probably Roach for that deck thin, because you guys know how much I love deck thin, and then probably degrade Stregobor to a 7 cost unit. But the thing is, the 7 cost units, actually they're not so bad. I could probably get away with putting in a actually I can get away with putting in Albric. Again, remember, we want that top card well, we want that, not mentality, but we want that top card use, right? So I actually think that Albric here is a pretty good replacement, but the only problem is he doesn't provide that much tempo. But you know what, you don't ever want to use him for the 3rd round, unless you want to combo it with Jan Calvé. So I actually think I will make the change here. I'm gonna get rid of Asir, put in Albric, and then I could actually put in a Royal Decree. I'm actually putting Royal Decree instead, just because I find Royal Decree to be like very valuable. So I just did make the tweaks now. So I am making these tweaks as I go, because honestly, like, you never know what's really gonna come across while you play it. And remember, I kind of have my own playstyle. I'm just use the camera. I also have my own playstyle as well, and I'm just trying to incorporate into that. So moving down the line, we have Isbel of Haga. Again, she lets you look at both cards, both top cards, and you get to keep one. Opponent gets to keep the other. Again, sort of that top card We want to keep it the top card theme of this deck is, and this is one of those cards that does that. Now, if it gets removed, it's no big deal. There are so many other ways for you to get the top card out that she is sort of just there as a sort of insurance policy. Because if it does what you want it to do, you get the top card out of your deck. Or if you find that the opponent has an even better card, by all means, take it. Or B, it also serves as removal bait. So, you know, you get rid of that card, no big deal. A lot of other cards out there that provide a lot of power, which is one, essentially. Traherne, again, if you want to provide that disruption, then you want to choose to return a unit from your opponent's field back on top of their deck, and you can just combo it with Traherne, get rid of it. Hopefully you won't see it again unless they have the card like Renew, which I don't think anyone will have anymore because it's been nerfed. Artorius Vigo doesn't exactly have a big factor here. That Assimilate is pretty good, and that's also kind of why I added a Imperial Diplomacy, just because I wanted to give some value to that Assimilate. But other than that, you're pretty much using it to sort of, it's essentially a stronger version of Imperial Diplomacy, in which they both play bronze cards from your opponent's faction. So I might change that as well. Decoy is a card that I have not seen played in a while, but hey, you know what? This is one of those sort of top deck theme, but here's the problem with Decoy though. Because an ally unit gets shuffled back into your deck, I'm not quite sure if it's been tested that Decoy will actually play the top card of your deck based on what you know. So like, let's say for example, if I were to return like my Imperial Golem with Decoy, does the whole deck get shuffled, or just the Golem itself, and then the top card will remain the same? So that's sort of a strange unknown, because if you go start setting up your deck to put a top card in, and then you play Decoy, and it turns out that it's been shuffled so that your top card is no longer your top card, then you're kind of screwed, and you don't really want that. So I don't know, I might test Decoy if I get the chance. Imperial Golem is again a good combo with Reinforced Invocation if you plan to use it to put a card back to your opponent's deck. So if you get a 1 base power 1 unit to return Reinforced Invocation, play Imperial Golem. It's essentially a 7 provision for 10 cost, which is always a good surplus that you want to have. Cynthia lets you spawn the Guardian and put on top of the opponent's deck. Now, the thing with the Guardian is because it's only a 3 power, if you combo Imperial Golem with Cynthia, it'll be pretty good as well, because, you know, Cynthia only has, the Guardian only has 3 power, and then you play the Imperial Golem right after, because I'm pretty sure the opponent's not going to want to draw out the Imperial Golem almost immediately. So, pretty strong combos. Like, there are 2 cards here that always have combos with themselves, if not 3. You always want 3 or more cards that have good synergy with others, but you don't ever want to have 1 stagnant card in the deck. You don't ever want that. Again, the Outbreak is the addition I made. We're trying to stick to that top card theme, except this time any card, if I move any card and it's a unit card, it gets boosted by 2, so I get that extra 2 power. The only bad thing is this is actually a pretty slow card, so I gotta make sure I have a decently strong lead before I start playing Outbreak. Cantarella we kind of went over. Again, if you want to play the top card of your opponent's deck, try to make sure that it's on your favor. So again, Reinforced Invocation does the job like that. Now the only problem is because Reinforced Invocation is only 1 card. It only gets its uses once, so you want to be careful about where you use it, who you use it on, and make sure the combo works well. Roderick of Duntine. Honestly, it guarantees you a gold out from your deck, and that deck thin is always pretty good, so I chose to keep it. Viper Witchers for that disruption of your opponent's deck, because you might strike gold and you might just get rid of one of their strongest golds in the deck. If it happens to be their highest provision, feel free to play the freaking Harquax, whatever. After, and then you know, you can wreak havoc on it. I always find this to be a very annoying card, because especially if they like take out one of my stronger units, like I like losing my mind. Imperial Brigade is good. Again, deck thin. You always want that deck thin. Alzur's Thunder provides a really strong tall removal. It's a 5 for 5, which is actually really nice, and you can get rid of quite a few engines despite their boosts with it. So, but pick your poison. Choose wisely, because sometimes it just takes 1 engine to sort of turn the tide of battle. Imperial Diplomacy. Again, it's kind of the combo assimilate with Arturia's Vigo, and then it's similar ability where you can create a card from your opponent's faction and summon it and play it. Tourney Joust, this is trying to support the Alzur's Thunder. They damage it by 4 instead of 5, but again, I'm pretty sure 4 is more than enough to, you know, get rid of some of the stronger engines that are out there that have been more played since they've discouraged the use of strong removal cards, which actually values these cards much more now. Nausicaa Sergeant and Infiltrator we already sort of went through, so this deck is actually also another really strong deck that can be played. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think about decks that can kind of counter against it. The sort of weaknesses of this deck, it does take some time and preparation to set up, and you need to be able to keep track of what cards you want to put on top of the deck for you to combo with it, because if you lose track easily and you end up playing a card that lets you play the top unit but you never actually like put it on top, or if it got shuffled or whatever, then you're kind of screwed a little bit there. So this deck will definitely take some thought to sort of perfect, but I think this deck has a lot of potential, because I think this is, I'm gonna just call this the lucky top deck deck. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment on any changes you guys would like to make, or if you just like the deck there, just let me know anyway. That'd be great. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion. And if you guys have any other decks you guys would have me take a look at and analyze, do let me know. And consider subscribing for more videos, and I'll have the gameplay video out for you guys on Thursday, and the deck list, this deck list video out tomorrow. So this is Enzo signing out. I'll catch you guys in the next one.